Everybody, welcome back to Communal Expressions. We're here with another update on COVID-19, and we're just getting another perspective from one of our leaders in our community here in Birmingham. And so joining me, my co-host, Richard Rice. How are you today, Richard?
I'm doing well. How are you, Eva?
Good. Great to see you on my monitor today. We have with us Miss Salaam Green. And so when I think of Salaam, I think about healing, I think about women, I think about empowerment, I think about just confidence. I watch her online every day, Brown Girl Walking, and I'm always encouraged when I see her on my feed on Facebook. Don't get to see her as much as I should, but I get to see her on my Facebook feed. But Salaam, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing good. So thank you. Yes. I'm here.
Yeah, we're still alive. So thankful that you took time out of your day to join us. Richard and I know we've done an interview before in the past, and I think that's probably about 6 or 7 months ago. And so much has changed in our lives, so much has changed in the world. And so we really brought you here today to get a perspective on COVID-19. But I want you to tell our listeners who you are in your own words.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard and Eva, for having me today. And thank you for these wonderful conversations that you're having. They're keeping me, abreast of what's happening in the community and seeing faces like I think so many people need to see. My name is Salaam Green, and I'm a poet and a creative writer and storyteller. And so I own a literary healing arts business here, and I just do writing to heal, workshops and training and all those kinds of things. I love to walk, I love to write, but part of my journey is all about helping other people heal and using their voices to heal their lives. And so I do that through the avenue of community organizing, social justice storytelling, one-on-one coaching, what have you. So just my whole thing is to help everyone kind of become a little bit more vulnerable with their own voices in their own lives.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so, Literary Healing Arts Institute, when I look at your site, it talks about turning art deserts into art meccas. And how have you been able to work around COVID-19 and still kind of keeping that, what you typically do face-to-face with groups, with women? How have you been able to work around that?
Well, it's been a challenge, but it's a challenge for everyone. So my biggest workaround is not to pretend like everything is the same, or pretend like I can continue the work in the same manner that I've been continuing the work, or with the same hours or jest or just the same knowledge. So some of the ways that I've been really doing is doing some online storytelling, continuing with my own personal practice and lending that practice to the work that I do as well. It's April and it's National Poetry Month, which would have been a huge month for me. Had a whole lot of things planned. So what I'm doing is once a week, or I'm sending out a poetry prompt to folks who are a part of my group as well. So I'm still keeping people alive with words and the healing power of words and those kinds of things. But I think like a lot of small business owners, social entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, I'm just trying to figure it out, while at the same time coming to terms with where I need to go next, who I am and who I want to be, and who I think what I think the community might need right now. So I'm just kind of mulling all that over right now.
Yeah, I've been seeing your kind of the post saying, hey, if you want a poem, shoot me an inbox.
Yes.
How has the response been for that? Have you gotten a lot of response from that?
Yes, I have a small group of maybe about 20 people who I've been sending a poem to every single day. I've just been giving them kind of a taste of different kind of poetry that I like, and then different kind of poetry that they like. Actually, my therapist is in the group, which is a little, kind of like, okay, but he's really wonderful. And he's actually doing a haiku a day during the month of April. So he said it was really inspired for him to kind of come from some of the other things that he's doing to kind of self-distract by doing poetry and then getting back into his own lane and his own words as well. So my whole thing is impact one person, one person's life, if any, it's like, Christ says is the one we go after, or however many. So I've been getting some response from it, and I feel for me, it's been helping me as well continue with my practice.
Awesome. Richard, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Happy to jump in and happy to have you back, Ms. Salaam Green. We've had some good conversations over on the radio station and the podcast previously. And right now, I think it's so important for us to be mindful of what's actually happening around us, but also to have the right perspective too, because we are co-creating our reality, in the midst of these environmental issues that we don't control, and how we see things and then the words we put out there is definitely going to impact the reality that we exist in. So I have so much respect for what you do and how you do it. And you said something there in your intro about, making everybody feel more comfortable being vulnerable. And, so many folks that even I have talked to so far have encouraged service industry workers, artists, solopreneurs, all of us to be vulnerable and tell our story, because there's a great sense of collectiveness and identity right now amongst the general public. And, we're kind of speaking to the choir in this group, but, in terms of just the general public seeing like we're all in this together, in terms of everybody's vulnerable to this virus.
Right.
If we don't all take collective action, you can't really protect yourself individually if we don't have some type of buy-in. But
Yes.
Can you just talk about why it's important for us to be willing to be vulnerable and how that kind of adds to all of this?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's not easy. Vulnerability is not easy. So that's not something I pretend like it's easy. How I got to the place of where I'm vulnerable every day is still not easy for me. I am a pessimist. I was born that way. I'm a skeptic. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, what's going on around the world, But I have to purposefully train myself through routine. So the importance of vulnerability, if we don't tell the truth now, when? If we don't tell our truth now, when? Like, the world and nature is speaking to us. Intuitive, our bodies are speaking to us. Intuition is speaking to us. So it's, I think, imperative that we tell our truth as far as how we feel about our jobs, how we feel about the economy, how we feel about our families, as much as we feel comfortable in the view telling those types of things, because other people are going through similar circumstances, right? And sometimes we feel like we are alone. And there's a difference in loneliness and being alone. Loneliness is totally fine. We all get lonely sometimes. We have an imagination, and then we can get bored and we can find things to constructively help us create. But being alone is a stressor. Being alone can be a medical condition. Being alone can cause a whole lot of things in our bodies and our minds and mental health that aren't conducive to a healthy lifestyle. But if we collectively tell stories, collectively are vulnerable to what's going on in our personal lives and connect with other people, then we help people feel less alone. And I think that is so important. What we see happening in nursing homes, what I tell people, grandma's always been in that nursing home. She didn't just in the last 2 weeks and then now we're really excited. I can't see grandma, so we're going to cry, right? No. So hopefully it helps us to begin to see that those stories have always been there. And they are of dire importance that we continue to tell those stories. And we tell it, I think, with vulnerability for me, is with my own truth in that moment. Right now, what my own truth is. It may change in the next moment, but what is my own truth right now? What am I really going through? What are my fears? Where's my faith? How is my spiritual life lining up with nature? What have you?
Right, definitely. I appreciate that. And I think that's so important, and this idea of vulnerability is like a critical part of storytelling. And then if I can tell you my story, which is unique to me, I feel like it's unique to me, but in doing so in a vulnerable way, in a true and authentic way, then that's going to open the doors for other people to see our commonality in a lot of ways is kind of what I'm picking up on what you're saying. And I know your genre, your specialty is literary healing art. So can you tell us what that means to you? And then also kind of give us, in addition to vulnerability, maybe 3 to 5 basics of storytelling, because I understand that that's a big component of what you do.
Absolutely. To me, literary healing art is using words that's going to help encourage your life, that's going to help support your healing journey, wherever that might be. And healing has an ing on it. To me, literary healing is using books, articles, essays, poetry, any type of literary device, journaling, to help support you build resilience and encouragement in your own life, whatever that like. As a creative writer, I do essays and I do some journalistic type of work, but most of my work that I do one-on-one with people is really what I call right to heal, helping people use their past trauma, their current hardships, and turn that into hope so they can now reimagine what their lives can be. And we do that through writing and journaling. So that's basically what literary healing means to me. 3 ways that we can kind of tell our stories, 3 ways I really believe that's imperative. There are so many different ways out there, you know, story arc, finding all these different hooks and those kinds of things. But the number 1 way is truth telling. Dig deep inside of yourself and where is your truth? Like, where is your real truth? And I usually start with, tell me about what's your favorite food, or what's your favorite place to be in nature, or who is your favorite person to be around, or who is your hero. And as we talk about those personal spaces in your life, then part of storytelling is truth. Another part of storytelling is vulnerability, like we've been talking about. How can we get to the heart of the matter? How can we get to the meat of this thing? How can we get to the place of connectivity, the place of realness, the place of, okay, oh yeah, I'm fishing on the pier with you. We're in this together. I'm at the barbershop getting my hair cut too. Oh, okay, I've got children and I'm cooking in the kitchen too. This story is helping me see me inside of you, and I represent who you are, and it's a universal theme. And the last part, which is usually the conclusion or kind of the thing that draws everybody in and causes you to cry or laugh or whatever, would be simply tapping into your impact. Like, what do you want people to know most about you? We just sometimes call it legacy. Right now, I think it's a good time to be thinking about, like, what is your legacy? If you're like me in my former life, for 15 years, I was a workaholic, you know? Do I want that to be my legacy? Like, okay, you know, where have you been, Salaam, all day? Well, you know, I've been in the car driving to Montgomery, Mobile, you know, and that kind of thing. Or will my legacy be that, you know, I sat, you know, in the park with my, you know, niece, and we, you know, talked about how she felt that she might not have graduation at Alabama State in May, you know, and she told me how she felt. And my legacy is to connect her with how I felt, you know, in my life, knowing that I might not be able to sit in those stands to see her either. And we waited, you know, 11,000 years, right? You know? So those are some simple ways that I tap into storytelling.
That's great. That's good feedback. What do you think, Eva?
As I unmute myself. I think that's awesome, because one of the things Salaam and I had coordinated that this month at the church, we were going to do something with the women. And we're going to have to talk to see how we can work around that, and maybe we can do a collective Zoom one Saturday and still get us a chance to express ourselves, how we're feeling, because Black women wear so many different roles. And so right now we are in the house, mother, wife, me by myself, just looking, you know, alone. Yes. But we wear so many roles and helpers and still working our jobs. I think it's healthy for us to find a way, even in this moment, to still connect. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about how we can still make that happen in a way that's conducive and healthy for all of us to be vulnerable over Zoom.
Absolutely. Yes.
But you had a feature, I want to say last week in Reckon.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, so part of what I do is a little freelance writing. I wrote a piece about social distancing or physical distancing now in the era. A few years ago, maybe it's probably been 10 years ago now, I can barely remember, but I was diagnosed with agoraphobia, the fear of going out of my house. And it's real. And so as a Black woman, I have so much shame around that, and I rarely talk about that, because when you talk about, you mean you're afraid to go out of your house? You know, people really, what does that really mean? And it's an anxiety disorder, and having that anxiety disorder, I went to work and came back home, and that's all I did. And I got an eating disorder as a result of it. So many other things happened in my life. And that fear started to come back when we were getting the mandates, and I'm an introvert, so it was like, oh, I could be cool with this, you know, I could be at home, because I'm at home all the time. I really have no life, so I don't know why I should be so afraid. Like, this is gonna be like, everybody's like, I'm like, what are people missing? Where are y'all going? What are you doing? You know? And when this happened, I began to kind of go back into some of that anxiety, because no one wants to be told you can't, right? We don't want to have mandates on our life, and I turned back into like that 2-year-old tantrum of, no, you're not going to tell me I can't go. So some of that anxiety came back. So I wrote a feature about what it's like to have agoraphobia and to recover from social anxiety when you cannot go out in public and actually do the things that recovery mandates that you do. That's talk to people and socialize with people and, not kind of sink back into that lonely place. So my fear was going back into that depression, going back into the loneliness, going back into the anxiety, and what that might look like. And I wrote it because I know a lot of people suffer with social anxiety, depression, mental disorders, and mental illnesses, particularly Black women, and have shame. And at this time, we may be peaking in those areas.
Wow. And I was, when I read it, I had no clue, but I'm sure that piece brought healing for somebody else who may be dealing with that, because that took a lot of vulnerability, because most people say, if I'm not dealing with it today, then, why should I share that? Right.
Right.
I think that your vulnerability, especially in this season, is helpful for people. But I assume this Zoom meeting, though, is helpful for you as well.
Yes, this is why I'm helpful from, yes. And I've been trying to do more of those as well, but this is very helpful. And it's a like Richard was saying, we are collective. And sometimes we forget that, we need one another. We are not an island. So in my mind, as I'm going through this and I'm being very reflective and trying to be less productive, I'm thinking back to my grandmother. I've been just thinking like, okay, my grandmother, she was, grew up in rural Alabama, lived there all her life. This is pretty much what her life was like, wasn't going out all the time. She didn't drive, she gardened, people, her neighbors were maybe far away because they lived in a rural area. So I go back and I think about my grandmother and how maybe she maintained her mental health and how she used her imagination to cook and to clean and to take care of the community and to take care of nature. And then how that's part of who we already are, and how do we honor that spirit at this time. And so part of that, writing that article, is like, I am not social anxiety. That is a disorder that I have, that I use medication to support me, but that's not who I am. And I want others to know, like, that's not all of who you are. We can honor other spaces inside of ourselves, while at the same time being vulnerable to things that we may have experienced as a result of trauma or life experiences.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I can't wait for the replay on this so I can really digest all that you just said. But Richard, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, I do. I had one. Sure, I do. I mean, this is kind of touches on something you've already said, but to the extent that, these type of incidents, this is a pandemic. This is the first time in my lifetime, and so many other people that we experienced anything like this.
No.
I suppose it's all relative,
Yeah.
But I hear you. And so what is the narrative? What is your narrative? What is your story that you would tell if you wanted this pandemic to if you were creating a collective narrative to heal us? What would you say? Maybe not tell the story, but what would kind of be the takeaway from this issue? What would you want to see us do differently when we come out of this, in a way to show that we have learned a lesson and grown from the situation?
Imagination is the one word that I would say, is reimagine who you are. You have the ability to create the life that you want for your life, for yourself. One thing I've always believed, even if I haven't acted as so, is that you always have a choice. You always have choices in life, even if it's maybe not choices that you necessarily would have chosen. Like, we didn't choose this pandemic, and we didn't choose what the solutions the government has given us to us. But my narrative is that you have a choice to create the life that you choose to create for yourself. And how do we do that? This is an opportunity to reimagine what life may be, or what life can become for you and those who are around you that you have been gifted and called to touch every single day. I work with third graders as a teaching artist. And for a year, I've been teaching the theme of imagination. And I never thought I would have to teach imagination to children. But because of the social media and everything, children have lost imagination. They are bored all the time. They have no idea what to do. So as I'm sitting there teaching imagination, think about things that are not really there. That's what your imagination is. and having to continue, I realized as adults, oh, we have to now go back and remember what imagination is. We now can imagine what our lives can be. We don't have to go back to where we were before if it wasn't working for us. And I don't think it was for many of us. So I would say the narrative is reimagine what your life can become as a result of where you are today. You have the ability to create that.
I like that too, and I think that that's appropriate. I think it's timely, and this type of incident allows us to see, how fragile life is and how fragile, our existence is, society's existence. Not just my individuality, my life, but the way we know society to be is fragile too, and it can be changed based on this circumstance wasn't unforeseen. I'm not going to get into that because I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm just saying that what you said, you said we don't have control over the pandemic. And we don't have control over how our government responded. We don't, because they were already elected. But in the next election cycle, we should be able to be mindful of the fact that there was information out there. This was a foreseeable event, and we could have been more prepared. But that's another topic. And so, I appreciate what you're saying about imagination. I think that's so key, in terms of being able to, grow and become who we want to be. And my next question is really about, as a lawyer, a lot of time, or a litigator, you're in court, you're arguing, making an argument in front of a judge, or maybe in front of a jury, or if you're just out in public and you're meeting new people, it's so important to be present in that moment so that you can actually, have appropriate response and be able to speak to people where they are. What advice can you give to people? And I know being vulnerable, that's it. But how do you get to that point of being vulnerable where you can just be present in the moment and speak to people based on where they are instead of being caught up into what you have planned for tomorrow, or if you have social anxiety, or if you're concerned about your hair or your weight or what your clothes look like? How do you come into the moment and speak directly to people in a way that's effective?
A lot of times, to be totally honest, I let people know it may be a challenge for us, particularly as adults. We have so many things going on, but I do really start with a simple activity. And I ask them to find an object that's in the room. It can be a book, a pencil. Then I ask them to kind of describe that object. With the pencil, it's yellow, it has lead, it has a, orange eraser, it has pencil number 2 written on it. Then I ask them to think about 3 ways that you use that pencil. You use that pencil to write with. I can use that pencil to point. I can use that pencil to draw with. Then I ask them to take that pencil and put that pencil in their hand, and then imagine for themselves, what can they do with that pencil in this particular moment? And a lot of times I'm going to write with it. I'm going to draw with it. I'm going to, erase something with it. And I tell them that's how you're in the moment. The very thing that you can do right now that's in front of you is the thing that you can focus on in the moment. And I oftentimes ask people, just take yourself back to that pencil. If you start going off in this world, and I do community organizing and social justice work, so I'm the first one to talk about healing justice, and let's go out and do mutual aid, all these things that are going on. We should have stopped this. What's wrong with the world? I can't believe, blah, blah, blah. But okay, let's ground ourselves to where we are in this second. And if you find yourself going to 3 months from now, or, oh my gosh, this is going to be over in July, or I just talked to someone honestly, and we're talking about, no, the stability to the economy is it's not going to be July, it's not going to be August. If you're going that way, grab your pencil, put the pencil in your hand, feel the pencil, stay in the moment with the pencil, do something with the pencil, and take a breath.
I like that. I think we need to have another conversation offline to continue this conversation, because there's a lot of things I want to ask, and it has a great deal of value. And but maybe you don't know all the value that it could add in certain situations too, because that's so important. And if you think about it, if you think, for instance, have you ever had jury duty before?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and so you've been summoned to come down, literally summoned. Legally you have to be here, and you have a job, you have kids, you have a family, responsibilities, and then they want you to come solve somebody else's problem, but you have your own problems, you have your own responsibilities, And so how do you break through all of that to get somebody to focus on your client, to focus on your case, to focus on your cause, not just as enough to check the box, but to really care and appreciate the duty and responsibility and the opportunity they have to really create justice, you know. So this is really important, but it's not just for that purpose, because it carries over into a romantic relationship, the ability to have presence, you know, and obviously if you out in public, you know, in any situation. So the work you do is so important and so valuable, and like I said, it impacts every aspect of our life. So, you know, hats off and salute to you for the work that you're doing. And I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can have an opportunity to continue this conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Outside of this interview as well. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yes. I mean, I agree. I talk to people all the time. Like, this is for people who are working in the workforce, children, whatever you're doing. We need to have some talk about how do we then start healing and become more vulnerable so that we can be present with folks. So thank you.
No problem. Definitely. Eva, tossing it back to you.
Salaam, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate this discussion. Want to let everybody know that this will eventually be on Facebook Live. So when you see it, if you hear me right now, go ahead and click share it to your group, share it to your friends. But it'll also be on YouTube if you look up Communal Expressions, or likely if you just go Google Salaam Green in a few days, that you will find this interview. But let us know what you want to hear. What perspectives do you want to hear? We've talked to servers, we've talked to attorneys, we've talked to school teachers. Who are we missing? Let us know who we're missing, because we're all about even bringing you the voices that you want to hear. I've enjoyed this interview and this conversation. We're going to talk to Salaam again about mass incarceration and the work she's doing in that area. That's another interview that we have that's on our tentative Talk to Salaam about. But I'm looking forward to that discussion as well. Thank you so much, Salaam. And
thank you.
If you in any way, reach out to one of us.
Absolutely. Thank y'all. This was fun. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.